We're talking with Robert W. Nishman, who is an attorney still practicing in Brooklyn, is that right?
Well, I practice in Long Island.
Practicing in Long Island.
Generally, the five boroughs.
But we're here aboard the battleship New Jersey talking with former Lieutenant J.G. Nishman,
That's correct.
who served aboard the New Jersey from 1954 to 1956. Thanks for talking with us.
Well, my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Tell me, first of all, how you ended up on the New Jersey.
Well, I was a college student in started in 1950 at Columbia, and the Korean War was on. During that period of time, it became evident that all the young fellows are going to be serving at one point or another. Although I had a student deferment, and I had no problem from that standpoint, but my father was ill. He was had several heart attacks, and my mother was quite worried about the fact that would push him over the top if I ended up getting drafted. And so I joined the NROTC at college, and when I finished my 4 years, I was then in a position to be called for active duty. We were told at the time that we might have a year delay, and again, my mother suggested to me that I couldn't sit around the house and do nothing for a year, so I applied to law school. I got accepted at law school, and then I got called into the Navy.
Oh well.
Oh well.
Best laid plans.
But it was okay. I was assigned to the New Jersey directly. I don't think that I ever had any choice or any indication of the type of ship that I would like to serve on, although I had served on a destroyer as a midshipman, and I was not nuts about that. I picked up the New Jersey after it got back from Korea. I had sailed on the Iowa, which was a similar class battleship to the New Jersey, until New Jersey got to Norfolk, Virginia, and then I went on board there and stayed there the entire 2 years that I was in the service.
Interesting. Now, so tell me just a quick capsulization of your tours of duty. Where did the New Jersey take you while you were there?
Well, we did 2 tours in the Mediterranean. So I had a wonderful opportunity to travel, something that I had not done up to that point. We were in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, in fact, we were in one of the Iron Curtain countries, and I don't recall which one it was because we played basketball there, and I was coaching the team. And Norfolk, Virginia, where we spent refitting. The Mediterranean was the prime source of duty that the ship had while I was in the service.
Right. Now, when you came aboard, you roomed with a Lieutenant J.G. Lewis Ivey, who since went on, who actually stayed in the Navy. You got out, he stayed and became a captain before retiring, who had the distinction of being the first African-American officer aboard the New Jersey. Now, when you were rooming with him, were you aware of that distinction?
Well, I was certainly aware of the fact that he was black.
He was African-American. There you go.
An African-American. I certainly was aware of the fact that we were, I guess, different. At the same time that Lou was the first African-American, I was a Jew, and there weren't many Jewish officers in the Navy, and certainly not on the New Jersey. But we found each other. We spent some time at the ensign locker together, which is Boys Town. All of the young officers that came on the ship went into the ensign locker, and then ultimately, when you found a roommate that you were able to get along with, you moved out, which is what happened with us. Lou and I found each other. We found ourselves very compatible with one another, and we roomed together and had a wonderful time.
Do you think the fact that you were both minorities in an unusual application is part of what may have drawn you together?
Well, I think perhaps part of it was, sure. Yeah. There's no doubt about the fact that when you're in a position where you know that you're being perceived as different, and you know full well that both of you are perceived as different to some extent, that if you mesh, it's a very, very good thing.
Yes.
He's a highly intelligent, funny guy, good sense of humor, good to be with, a dependable, a good, loyal friend, and we got along great.
Things that you had in common.
We had a lot of things in common. I think there was no doubt about the fact, Lou's background was unusual, and both of his parents were educated. He was really a cut above probably most of the people on the ship. I mean, whether they were black or white.
Right.
And very well educated, very bright. So we had a lot of things in common, and we went out together. We took shore leave together. We commiserated with one another, and the relationship has lasted. It's now since 1954, so it's almost 50 years.
Wow.
So yes, it was a good. It was definitely. It had something to do with that also.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Before we started recording this interview, you were talking to me, and I found very compelling your description of the Iowa-class battleships and how important they were as not just a battle tool, but just as a, the Teddy Roosevelt extension of the walk softly and carry a big floating stick.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that the amazing size and strength and speed that the Iowa-class battleship bespoke is incredible. Over the years, this country has been very, very wise in using it as you said, as Teddy Roosevelt's big stick. If you wanted to get somebody's attention, you pulled out an Iowa-class battleship and sent it someplace, and you surely got their attention. We had an experience while I was on the ship when we sailed into the Israeli area, because there was some difficulty going on there, and they just wanted to have the presence of the ship there. And it's amazing what effect it has. If you look at that ship from shore, you swallow hard. There's a sense of power and determination. It's a presence that I don't think any other ship in the Navy has.
Right. And how did you feel on the ship? You talked about its power and its speed, in particular the speed. I mean, did you have a feeling of speed aboard the ship?
Well, I think that moving on to New Jersey was like driving a Mercedes. There was you didn't have to feel it to know it. I mean, you put on the gas and the car would go, and the same thing is true with that ship. It had the power, and if you needed it, it produced. So, but you weren't flung around. I mean, there wasn't any sense of getting tossed around if the ship moved at a rapid rate. No.
Right. What were your divisions? What were your assignments on the ship?
I was, interestingly, as I mentioned to you, when I came aboard the ship, my first duty station was up in Spot 1, which is, again, at the top of the ship, and what we would do would be to go up there during gunnery exercises, etc., or if it became necessary in wartime, and you would let the gun batteries know whether they were short or long in firing a shell, and there was a means of bracketing when you would go back and forth until you hit your target. You remember that the Jersey's batteries had a 23 to 24 mile range, which is pretty incredible to be, and to be accurate at that range. I then ended up as a gunnery in one of the turrets. I believe it was 3 that I was a gunnery officer in. Those were the only departments that I was involved in at all.
Well, you certainly got assigned to the big guns.
Oh, definitely, absolutely, and it was a real experience.
Yeah. In that spotting process, I mean, we hear, the tails are, 23 miles, accurate within 100 meters in the second round, and I mean, is that pretty close to correct?
That's very correct. They were amazing. You didn't have to, if you were short, perhaps the second shell might be long, but the third one was right on target, and very often the second one was right on target, because the adjustment was made quickly and the accuracy was unbelievable.
Yeah. And in the turrets, I mean, the book says that each gun is, 2 rounds a minute. Were you really doing about 2 rounds a minute, or was that pretty close to that?
Oh, I think it was capable of doing that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, mostly gunnery exercises, and up on the top, that must have been a particularly impressive bird's eye view.
Well, it was a bird's eye view. It also, the thing I remember most about it was the stack gas, because we were up and the stacks would blow and it would come in. But it was definitely a bird's eye view. It was something that you experienced, and it was fascinating.
Yeah. Life aboard ship. Now, you're an officer, so obviously it's a little bit better than theoretically an enlisted man's life. But what kind of things do you remember about that? What stands out in your brain? It's interesting, the stack gas being an interesting observation as something you don't think about. You think about being up top there and, I don't know, maybe you get a little more motion, but you don't think about those kind of things. But what kinds of things about life aboard ship do you remember?
Well, truthfully, not a great deal, which means to me that there wasn't a great deal of turmoil. By that I mean that the type of pressure that we received was not political. It was really doing your job. If you did your job and you worked at it, you did it well, things moved pretty smoothly. I had recollections of incidents that I would prefer to forget, only because they were motivated by the fact that I was Jewish, but they were not constant. I think that what you did is you learned how to handle yourself, as we did, and everybody does. You learn to handle yourself. You don't relish it, but then again, I think you understand the fact that people are different, and you would love to make an impact on them. You'd love to be able to get them to see you as just one of the guys. It's a little difficult because they don't perceive you as being one of the guys. A good deal of the people that we dealt with, or that I was dealing with, was Southern, and whereas Dr. Ivy had problems in one area, I had problems also in that area, because the concept was that Jews had horns and tails, and it was, I mean, they would tell you, well, we see that you don't. And you say, well, believe me, none of us do.
Right.
Take my word for it. This is not something that you're going to find. But I can't honestly say that I was held back as a result of it. I think that everybody did know, however, that I was an NROTC student, that I didn't plan to make
regular
the Navy a career. Right. And I think that the one opportunity that I had that I would have liked to have had that was denied to me was the fact that I wanted to go to JAG. There had been an opportunity.
Since you were studying law.
Right. They would send certain officers to get legal training, and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't send me. And honestly, I'm not a super qualified gunnery officer. I think you could spare me, which is something that I really wanted to do, but they wouldn't. But other than that, it moved along okay. I mean, we managed.
Yeah. Is that learning to cope with different people in different circumstances? Would you say that's what you took away, or should I rephrase that as, what else of importance did you take away, do you think, from your naval career, and being as it was almost entirely aboard the New Jersey?
Well, I think that I matured. I went into the Navy when I was 20. I was a young 20. I had gotten through school pretty quickly. I got through college pretty quickly, and what it did was that it gave me a sense of myself as a person, as a leader, the sense of responsibility, being able to carry out a job, whether you in fact liked it or not, but did your job to the best of your ability. Relate to people, which I think it's always stood me in good stead, because I'm practicing law over 40 years. You got to get along with people. At this particular moment, my wife, I'm sure, is laughing, because she's going to say, "You've got to be kidding." But I did learn a lot, and I think that it was a worthwhile experience, and I think and I've said it forever that for me it was a worthwhile 2 years that I spent, and I don't think I ever would have matured as quickly or had progressed as well if I had not had the time in the service.
Right. Well, we're very grateful you took time to talk with us. He is Robert Nishman. He is a practicing attorney, 40 years now in Long Island, and 2 years aboard the New Jersey from 54 to 56. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
People. I tell you what I was most angry about, because how stuff travels to the military. I was most angry about hearing that the Marines did not even have ammo in their weapons, because back then everything had to be so PC, you couldn't do that, and those guys never had to die. But because of the decisions people make, to me it helped create that. Now maybe they would have come up with another way, maybe they couldn't have gone so far, but you know what, it hurt, and it still to this day bugs me. It really irritated us. And so the day that we finally got to cut loose with the 16s, we were happy. And we fired rounds all day long. And to us, it was getting even. It was getting even. You hurt us. You hurt us. And that's kind of, to me, how I looked at it. We're getting even.
Did that affect the morale of the crew, the bombing of the Marine barracks, and how did the crew feel? Was it similar to your reactions?
I think different people were different ways. I remember there were nights we were up here that I remember laying in my rack, and I would hear people crying. They were young kids. They had wives and stuff. They never expected to be away for a long time. But no, it kind of galvanized us. We all felt the same way. But we were all here and all together, and most of us were kids, and I don't want to say it was a game, because it wasn't. But we didn't look at the world the same way. Not like we would now. We just didn't. We were invincible. When you're in your 20s, your teens, nothing's going to hurt you. But then all these guys were gone. And that really bugged us. It really bugged us. And I can't say how everybody felt. I think that after it happened, it's just one of those things we didn't talk about. That day that it happened, we talked about it. Scuttlebutt said, well, they're looking for volunteers to come in and be able to help dig out. And then nothing ever happened on that, because some of us were wanting to do that. But no, I don't remember what it did. I just know how I personally felt, and kind of some of the other guys. I mean, they're the guys that were gone. We didn't know that now the Master Chief that was from the ship, that because that was us, even more so that hurt us.
The ship, by the way, for your information, did hold a memorial for Chief Gorchinsky, which I have on tape. If you ever like to get a copy of that, I can make a little DVD copy up for you too and mail it out to you. So you and your friends can take a look at it. That was done on the ship about 2 years ago, I think. They had a memorial ceremony and so on like that to honor the chief.
They did. That would be nice. We did a burial at sea for him too, right after we came back. But no, it was an experience. One of the things that really irritated people, most people don't know about, is when we came here, we were originally told we were going to be home by Christmas. Chief of Naval Operations, I think it was the Chief of Naval Operations, sat right up in the mess deck and said, you guys will be home by Christmas. Well, we didn't make it. We didn't make it at all. It was a long time before we got to come home.
As a final question, because we have 3 minutes to go, did anybody, you said the Marines supposedly didn't have ammunition in their weapons at the gate and so on like that, but was anybody on the ship angry at the President? Because later he's criticized Ronald Reagan for putting the Marines in a hotel, which became their barracks, which was exposed instead of having them dig in as a combat unit
No,
would.
you know what? That didn't happen because